Until now, only a handful of people actually know this story. It's one of those kind of ones where you keep it to yourself because you don't know how many people are going to believe you or who's going to mock you or say that you're lying. And to be honest, I'm a really rational minded person, so for me, I struggle to find an explanation for this. Even though I'm a scientist, I'm literally doing a master's degree in science. For me, I think the reason that why it's such an interesting and scary story is because I just can't think of a rational explanation behind it, no matter how hard I try. If you can think, once I've told the story, obviously, if you can think of a rational explanation, please comment below. Anything except for you're just making it up or you're just delusional. So to start off, I think it's quite important to give some background on the location as to where this story happened, because it adds to the reason as to why it could potentially be paranormal and adds to just generally the spooky vibe and why me and my friend that this happened to were so terrified. So the location itself when the incident happened was just a building site. However, prior to it being a building site, the location was an abandoned hospital. I'll try and add some information here, either cut it in or layer it over. Some information about when the hospital was built and when it was eventually demolished and turned into a building site. But when the hospital was active, it was a treatment centre for people with tuberculosis. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of death there, and subsequently when it was left abandoned, there was a lot of paranormal activity there. So it was a place where a lot of teens went to kind of freak themselves out, to take their friends and do some spooky stuff. However, me and my group of friends, being kind of serious paranormal investigators and being interested in the spiritual world and whatnot, we would go down there and kind of in a respectful manner, and rather than just messing about and drinking like most teens did, we would go down there with our equipment. We did a lot of Ouija boards, which I know some people are really against, but I've used my Ouija board as a really helpful tool over the years. We did EVP recordings, we did automatic writing, seances, things like that to be able to contact spirits. And we found that it was an extremely active place. As you can imagine, I have a complete back catalogue of paranormal stories from that area. So if you would like to hear more paranormal experiences from that location, please like the video or comment underneath, whatever it is, and just let me know and I will tell the rest. But for now, obviously just focusing on this story. After the hospital was knocked down in the early 2000s, it was of course turned into a building site to build houses. The location now is the site of about 5 or 6 mansions. It was quite a large grounds, obviously being a hospital, so they built about 5 or 6 mansions there. It's a beautiful site now, but as I say, in the early 2000s it was just a building site. And even though me and my friends shouldn't have been hanging out there, of course, because it was trespassing, we didn't want to kind of abandon our most active site. As I said, we've done a lot of spiritual research there over the past year or so we didn't want to just abandon the spirits we'd contacted. We'd began kind of continuous dialogues or continuous relationships with a lot of the spirits we'd contacted there, and we didn't just want to up and leave them and kind of abandon them. So most of the time when we did our research, we would go in large groups because obviously, as you can imagine, it was quite a spooky experience, so we wanted to take as many people as possible to feel a bit safer. However, there was one incident where me and just my best friend went in the middle of the day. We were just kind of hanging out there for a while, and I think that I decided I wanted to get a better view of the grounds because it had changed a lot. With it being a building site, the grounds had changed a lot and there was different things over the area. So I think my logic at the time was that I wanted to get a better view of the grounds. So I said to my best friend, oh, I'm going to climb up this particular lot of scaffolding and I'm going to climb to the top level and have a look out over the grounds and kind of see what else is here, see if there's anybody else about. But the way this building site was laid out, the scaffolding that I'd climbed to the top of was kind of in front of the part of the house that would have the chimney once it was finished. And behind that bit of scaffolding, there was an even higher bit of scaffolding which reached a couple of feet above my head maybe. And on this higher bit of scaffolding was a big massive pile of bricks, obviously for building the house with. And so I stood on this quite high bit of scaffolding with this higher bit of scaffolding behind me, and I was just kind of scoping the area out for a while. Must have been up there a couple of minutes when my best friend looked up at me and she just looked up at me with this utter terror on her face. She drained completely white. I've never seen her face look like that in all of our 20 odd years of friendship. I've never ever seen her face look like that another time. And I'm just going to... Anyway, as I say, she looked up at me and she just had pure terror in her eyes, and she started screaming up to me, "Trisha, you need to get down now. You need to get down now." And I was like, why? It's safe. It's pretty sturdy. Like, I don't think I'm going to fall off. I'm okay. And I was like, you know me, I'm a bit of a tomboy. I like climbing. I'm going to be all right. And she was screaming up, "No, I'm telling you, you need to get down now. Get down." And again, I protested and was kind of like, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine up here. I don't really need to get down." She was like, "Please, if you trust me as your best friend, you will get down off that scaffolding now." And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I gently climbed down, like got down really softly because I didn't want to freak her out. So I got down really gently and I went over and I gave her a hug. And I was like, "Diane, you're going to be okay. I was safe up there. I'm really good at climbing." And she was like, "No, Trisha, no. My granddad was there." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "My granddad, he was stood on the scaffolding behind you." And I was like, "Well, Diane, that's not possible. Your granddad's dead. He's been dead for a long time." And she was like, "I'm telling you, he was stood on that scaffolding, clear as day, behind you, looking at me." And I was like, okay. And we been stood there maybe a minute or two. I'm not exactly sure how long we were stood there. And then all of a sudden there was this almighty clatter bang. And we looked up at the scaffolding and the pile of bricks that were behind me before had all collapsed and fallen directly onto the spot where I'd just been stood. So if Diane had not shouted at me and forced me to get down off the scaffolding, those pile of bricks would have completely crushed me to death, or potentially hit me and knocked me off the scaffolding and I would have fallen to my death. There's no two ways about it. If I'd still been stood where I was stood, those bricks would have hit me and I would have been dead. So obviously in that moment, me and my best friend just burst into tears and couldn't believe what had just happened, couldn't believe that she'd gotten me down in time. We both kind of were stood there like, oh my God, what if I'd still been stood there? And we just kind of, at first we were more concerned about the fact that I'd almost just been crushed to death. And then as we walked out of the building site, we kind of looked at each other and was like, that's why he was there, that's why your granddad was there. He was warning me to get down, or warning you to get me to get down off the scaffolding, because he knew the pile of bricks were about to fall. Like, I don't deny, obviously, it was probably my fault. Because I was climbing on the scaffolding, there's a good chance that I shook the scaffolding and caused the pile of bricks to loosen and then fall. However, obviously if I'd have still been stood there, they would have fell on me. So I don't think for a second there was a paranormal reason behind the pile of bricks falling. I do think that was my fault. But obviously we can't explain why Diane's granddad was stood there, why she saw her granddad. I don't think to this day that she was making it up. The look on her face, as I say, I can still picture, even though it's been nearly 20 years, I can still picture that look as clear as day in my mind, because she was so terrified, so white in the face, like she was ill. And she just refused to allow me to kind of stay up there. Didn't matter how much I protested and said, no, I'm safe, I'm fine, I'm blah, blah, blah. She was like, no, get down. And I was kind of like, okay, yeah, she's clearly very, very terrified. I really do need to listen to her. And we left. And stupidly enough, that wasn't the last time we ever visited that building site. We continued to go there and do our investigations until the houses were finished, and obviously people started to move into the houses and the area was closed off entirely. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me, and a story that I've always wanted to tell somewhere. So there you have it. That's the story of how a ghost saved my life. Now, please feel free, as I mentioned earlier, to try and provide rational explanations for what happened that day, because I still haven't got a clue. And between me and my best friend, we can't think of a reason why it happened. So any explanation will be fully welcome. And as I say, if anybody else has been through an experience like this, please let me know, because I want to know that I'm not the only person that this has happened to. So thank you for watching. I hope that you're enjoying spooky season, and if you want me to continue to make paranormal videos, please give this a like so that I know you enjoy it, and obviously and continue to make them.